Denny Neagle is worried that people don't know who he is yet. Maybe it's because most of the batters he faced last year kept saying, "Who was that guy?" Jeez.
Braves and Cubs, 2:15 Eastern today on the Superstation.
All right, hello, baseball fans. Welcome back to Double Play Sports. I'm James alongside Pat. This is episode 38 of our podcast, and we are here alongside former MLB pitcher, two-time All-Star, and World Series champ, Denny Neagle. Denny, how you doing today?
I'm great. How about you guys?
Good. We're super happy to have you on the show. One quick question I have to ask you. So, when we do these, I like to do my research. I like to do my deep dive, see what I can figure out. And so I found some clips on YouTube of you making a train whistle noise, and I was extremely impressed. So could you give us a little demonstration here? That's crazy. I was just trying my hand at it earlier. I could manage choo-choo, but that's about the best I could do. Well, that's extremely impressive. How'd you learn how to do that?
It started when I was with the Pirates. They had this, rally train that would come out like in the 8th or 9th inning whenever we were down, and this cartoon caricature guy would stick his head out the train, and make that train whistle sound. Well, there was a pitcher that I played with named Stan Belinda, and he had a buddy of his that was like, he called him his dirt farmer buddy. And this guy used to come and hang out and watch batting practice, and he used to be able to do that. And I was like, I love doing noises, mimicking sounds and everything. And when I heard that guy do that, I was like, I got to learn that. So I would literally go back to my hotel room every night and just be like, whoa, and trying to figure out how to do that. And then eventually I finally mastered it. And I think Stan's buddy would even say I took it to another level, because then after that, I got asked to do it everywhere I went. Jim Rome used to have it on his opening for his show and stuff. So it was definitely my little calling card.
Yeah, actually, Jim Rome, the show is where I saw it. So that's really funny.
Yeah.
So, all right. My first question I have for you now is coming out of high school in Maryland, you attended the University of Minnesota, put up 3 very solid seasons on the bump, and were part of the 1988 Golden Gophers team that won the Big Ten tournament. So what edge did pitching in such a tough conference give you that early in your pro career?
It definitely made a world of a difference. I think when I first went there, I was a little hesitant, because I was like, Big Ten baseball, they were known more for football and basketball and stuff, and I was thinking about staying back home, going to University of Maryland or Georgia Tech. But my high school baseball coach he coached in the Junior Olympics with the assistant coach in the University of Minnesota right before my freshman year in college. And so when I was getting ready to make my choice, he was like, I'm telling you, you got to go to Minnesota, Denny. They're the program for you. And I was like, man, I don't know. It's freezing up there, man. I don't know if I feel like going to that cold weather, but it was the best choice I ever made. And then, once I got up there in the Big Ten and realized what type of competitive baseball it really was, it really did help my career out a lot, because pitching the Big Ten championship and going to the regionals, the first two, my freshman and sophomore year, we were unfortunate because, being a lower school, so to speak, as far as college baseball wise, even though we won the Big Ten and finished runner-up my freshman year, we got stuck my freshman year out in Stanford against Jack McDowell and #1 rated Stanford Cardinals in their regional. And then my sophomore year, we win the Big Ten tournament, and figured we have to get a better seed this year. Oh no, we went out to Fresno State, who was the #1 team in the nation that year, and they ended up having 3 first-round picks from that team. So They were stacked also too. So we got, we got the short end of the straw as far as, getting seated in the regionals and stuff, but it was an incredible experience that definitely helped my career out a lot.
Yeah, that's just unlucky. They kept sending you out to the #1 team in California.
Yeah.
So then you ended up in the 3rd round of the 1989 draft. You would be drafted by the Minnesota Twins. What was the draft day experience like for you?
It was incredible, because my dad was able to fly up there with me and watch like the end of the Big Ten season, and then stayed up there through the draft with me and got to experience that whole thing with me. And it's one of those things that, one of those memories that I'll always hold dear to my heart. I lost my dad about a year ago, and my dad was my #1 fan and stuff, so for him to be able to be there with me and experience that whole thing, and being able to hug my dad after I got the phone call, knowing that I got drafted and my dreams were coming to reality. It was an incredible experience. And then, being drafted by the Minnesota Twins, even though I grew up in Maryland, the fact that I went to University of Minnesota, I was considered local by the Twins. So, to be able to get, sort of being like a local draft pick, to go with the Twins, that was a really fun experience.
Yeah, I'm sure that's got to be a super special moment, especially being drafted by the town where you just played your last 3 years. So that's pretty great. So then after that, you dominated minor league hitters kind of across all three levels. And then especially in 1990, you went 20-3 with a 2.10 ERA across 184 innings. So what do you think helped you the most at the start of your pro ball career to excel?
There was a pitching coach I had in Visalia named Brian Allard, and I had a good changeup, but I didn't believe in it, and I felt like, when you get drafted and you're a high round pick, you feel like you have to throw hard, you have to prove yourself velocity wise. And this pitching coach I had in Visalia that year, he was like, "Look, Denny, I don't know where along the line somebody told you that you have to throw a certain miles per hour or certain velocity to be successful, but your changeup is one of the best changeups I've seen." He goes, it rivals that of Frank Viola, who was with the Twins at the time too, who ended up getting traded that year. But he said, when I watch you throw your changeup, you have to use that pitch more. So he literally, from the start of that season in Visalia, when I ended up going 8-0 in Visalia, he was like, this start, you're throwing minimum 15 changeups. The next one, I want you to throw 20. The next one, 25. So he forced me to use my changeup even more. And that was really what kickstarted my whole pro career, was the fact of being able to have the confidence to throw that changeup and use it often, because it was my number one pitch.
So I'm curious about that. In college at Minnesota, what was your usage like of your changeup?
Yeah, I had the changeup in college, but I think, again, because I didn't have the confidence in it, or to get drafted, unfortunately, and it's even more so these days with how velocity and how crazy it is with so many pitchers throwing 95 plus in the big leagues now and stuff. But you know, scouts can tell you that they look for potential and stuff like that, but the truth of the matter is, if you're not throwing upper 80s to low 90s, or at least hitting that on the radar gun, then a lot of times you're not going to get noticed as much. So I fell into that trap as well too, that by my junior year, maybe when I probably should have been throwing some more changeups, because it was definitely one of my better pitches, I was focused more on velocity and, how many times am I hitting 89, 90 on the gun, because that's what's going to get me, noticed by the scouts more and stuff. So I was definitely more of a fastball breaking ball pitcher with an occasional changeup in college. And I think I probably could have been that much even more successful had I utilized the changeup even more in college.
So you would make your MLB debut in July of 1991. You would start the game against the Milwaukee Brewers, and you ended up striking out Willie Randolph for the first strikeout of your career. What was your experience like stepping on the big league field for the first time?
It was a crazy, eventful first big league appearance for me, because, like you said, I mean, I gave up the very first hitter that I faced was Paul Molitor, that led off for the Milwaukee Brewers, and he's a former Golden Gopher as well too. So I had met Paul when he would come back for alumni events at University of Minnesota, and well on his way to a Hall of Fame career. So that was crazy, being able to face him as my first hitter. He had a laser base hit to left field off me, so I promptly gave up my first base hit. Then I strike out Willie Randolph for my first strikeout, give up my first big league home run to Dale Swaim. And then to top it all off, I'm winning 2-1, I think, in the third or fourth inning. I don't remember. And Candy Maldonado stepped up and hit a rocket line drive back at my forehead. And the only thing I could do when I followed through on it was just put my arm up like that to deflect the pitch, because he hit it so hard coming back at me, and it hit like just below the point of my elbow. Took like 2 bounces into the dugout in the Metrodome, which is, the dugouts are pretty far away. So, once I realized I couldn't make the play, my arm just started locking up on me, and the trainers came out and they took me off the field. And the worst part was it was a sold out crowd, because the Twins were in first place and the Brewers were our crosstown rival. So all I could hear, because they kept playing the replay on the big screen, over and over, of me taking that shot off my elbow. And so all I can hear is like 52,000 people just going, "Oh God," because it was pretty nasty looking. And my mom and dad are in the stands, and my mom said she practically got sick to her stomach watching the replay over and over too. So it was a pretty eventful first big league outing, one I'll never forget for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of guys we've talked to have talked about their like welcome to the bigs moment. You got that your first start. That's kind of crazy.
I had a little of everything. Yep.
Yeah. So Minnesota would end up winning the World Series in 91, and then spring training 92, you were shipped off to Pittsburgh along with Midre Cummings for All-Star and Cy Young candidate John Smiley. What was your experience being traded for the first time, and how did the switch go from Minnesota to Pittsburgh?
It was crazy because usually when you get traded, which I end up, getting traded a couple more times in my career, and the next couple times it was the rumors were out there left and right, so I pretty much knew it was coming. When I got traded that first time from the Twins to the Pirates, there was nothing. I heard nothing. My agent hadn't called me or anything. There was no rumors or anything. And so I remember we were on one of the backfields doing PFP, pitchers fielding practice, and I'm with all the other pitchers and our pitching coach, Dick Such, and Tom Kelly yells over, "Such, send me Neagle." So of course the veteran guys are going, "Uh-oh, what'd you get into last night, kid?" Whatever. And I'm like, "I was in bed at 8 o'clock last night, man. I didn't do anything." So I walk over to Tom Kelly, he puts his arm around me and says, "Son, Mr. McPhail, Andy McPhail, the general manager," he said, "Mr. McPhail just informed me that you've been traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" So because it just took me off guard, because like I said, there was no rumors or anything about it. So, the first thing was just shock, not even, realizing that there was a chance I was going to get traded. But then after it settled in, it was a really cool feeling because I'm from Baltimore. My mom grew up in Pittsburgh. My mom's dad, who I never met, he passed away when my mom was 16, but he was a Pittsburgh police officer that used to work games at the old Forbes Field and stuff, the old Pirate Stadium. So my mom and my mom's side of the family grew up huge Steelers and Pirates fans and stuff. And Pittsburgh was only a 4-hour drive from Baltimore. So my family couldn't have been more excited for me to, be going to a place that was going to be a lot easier drive for them to come up and watch me play.
Yeah, and then I mean, what was interesting about it, because I looked into the trade a little bit, is obviously the Twins had just won the World Series, and the Pirates were a really good team too. They had won like 90, 95 games, and John Smiley was their guy. He was their ace, and then they shipped him off. That was, so you don't hear rumors about that. You don't see that a lot. Like you see a team like the Dodgers and Kershaw going crazy. You don't see Kershaw getting shipped. So that was a little bit strange. I agree.
Absolutely.
So you would end up finding your footing in Pittsburgh right around 1995. You would post a 3.34 ERA and a 9-4 record at the All-Star break, which would earn you a spot on that year's All-Star team. That 1995 All-Star team was stacked with superstars. So what was the feeling like in that clubhouse? What was it like being part of the All-Star game?
It was an incredible feeling, just knowing that, first and foremost, you make it to the big leagues, and all you want to do is just, like you said, get your footing, feel like you belong, feel like you've kind of earned your way there. And then once you start to get that feeling, then of course, I would think, guys would be lying to you if they didn't say that, it'd be fun to at least make one All-Star team. So for me to go out there and put it all together that year and have the season I had in that first half, especially, and make my first All-Star team, it was just surreal. It really was. There's hardly any other word I can think of, because to walk around that locker room and look at some of my teammates like Tony Gwynn and, Matt Williams and then Greg Maddux and, some of the other great pitchers on there. And then more importantly too, on the other side, I grew up in Baltimore. So I grew up a huge Orioles fan, and Cal Ripken was one of my idols, and so to look across the field and see Cal over there and stuff, and that was the year he would end up breaking Lou Gehrig's record too and stuff, so, and then I don't know if you guys remember George Michael from the George Michael Sports Machine in DC. He was a really popular, sports talk show host out of DC, but he had a national syndicated show and stuff that he did like every Sunday night. It was called the George Michael Sports Machine. And he asked to do an interview with me and Cal on the field, because Cal's, not only did he play for Orioles, but Cal's also from Baltimore, and I'm just outside of Baltimore. So to be able to ask to do an interview with my idol too on the same field at the All-Star game was just an incredible feeling. And then to go out there and actually pitch a scoreless inning, and we were down by 1 run when I came in the 6th inning, I believe, and I held it to like a 2-1, deficit. And then we ended up scoring 2 runs, a couple innings later and winning that game. And it turns out it was one of the last National League wins in a while that we had that year too. So, but all in all, it was just a crazy, incredible experience for me.
Yeah, it's been a few years. We're both Mets fans, so we've been watching the All-Star game, just waiting for the National League to win.
Me too.
Yeah. So then midway through the 96 season, you were then traded again, this time to the Atlanta Braves, who were in the midst of a pretty serious pennant run. You then joined one of the greatest rotations ever. Pat's got them behind you there. John Smoltz, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, 3 Hall of Famers, 3 of the greatest pitchers ever. What was the clubhouse environment being surrounded by some of these guys? And I can't even just imagine being in that rotation.
Well, thank God those guys started listening to me, No, but it was incredible. I mean, people used to ask me when I got traded over there, what was it like? It must have been nerve-wracking, so much more pressure to pitch in that rotation. And I said, no, it really wasn't, because nobody puts as much pressure on me than myself. You know, I'm going to be my own worst critic. I'm always going to put the most pressure on myself. And I always said, I compared it to this, that being able to pitch in rotation with guys like that, to me, I compared it to like running a 100-yard dash, right? If you run a 100-yard dash against 3 or 4 other guys that you beat every time and you know you're going to beat them again, yeah, you're going to win the race, but you're probably not going to run your best time because you're not being pushed. Now, if you run that same 100-yard dash with 3 or 4 guys that are just as fast, if not faster than you, you might not win the race, but you're probably going to post some of your best times. And that's how I felt pitching that rotation with those guys. It was hard not for them. It was hard for them to not elevate my game to another level. Watching Maddox go out there and have a 79 pitch complete game, watching Smoltz strike out 14 guys like it was nothing. Glavine, you know, throwing 14 ground ball outs, you know, whatever, and watching him work his changeup. So by the time it was my turn, I'm like, I don't want to be the low man on the totem pole. So it elevated my game to another level. And that's why, you know, in 97, when my first full season there, I was able to put it all together and have my best season yet in the big leagues because of the fact I had the best seat in the house watching those guys on a nightly basis. How can you not learn from them?
I can only imagine just every day the next guy's trying to one up the guy before him.
Absolutely. You know, and we had some great friendly camaraderie. You know, we would even have games where, because the National League pitchers hitting, it'd be like me and Smoltz against Glavine and Maddox. And we, you know, at the end of the season, we tally up who had the most hits, the most sacrificed bunts, you know, and we'd have bragging rights, you know, and the losers would have to take us out to like Ruth Chris or something.
So then you ended up having you were pretty successful in the 1996 postseason. You earned a start in the NLCS pitch and ended up pitching Game 4 of the World Series against the Yankees. How did you handle, and how was it pitching on the biggest stage in baseball?
It was, you know, again, talk about another like surreal moment. You know, I mean, not only pitching the World Series, but against the New York Yankees, you know, the vaulted Yankees and stuff. But yet, you know, the Braves at the time, we were the favorite, finally starting to turn around and get back to their winning ways. And so, you know, it was an incredible experience. It was amazing to be able to go out there and pitch in Game 4 and everything. But, you know, it was also one of the most bittersweet moments of my career too, because unfortunately, obviously, we went up 2-0, beating the first 2 games in New York. So to win the first 2 games on the road in New York, come home with a 2-0 lead, you know, I wouldn't say we felt like we had it made, but we certainly felt really good about our chances. And then, you know, we lost a tough one in Game 3, Cone out pitched Glavine, and then my game was a turning point. You know, I had it, you know, we were winning 6-3, and then, you know, unfortunately, it is what it is. And it was one of those moments that, you know, goes down in the history of, you know, some of the most incredible turn of events in World Series history, you know, with Jim Leyritz hitting that 3-run homer off Mark Wohlers in the 8th inning. And it's a shame because Mark Wohlers was one of the most dominant closers in the game at that time. He'd come off an incredible 95 season, getting the last out in the 95 World Series, followed it up with another great season in 96. And all people want to talk about is how in the heck could he throw a slider to you know, Jim Leyritz? How did he hang that right there? Well, when you look at it, Jim Leyritz is one of the best fastball hitters I've ever seen. He can hit anybody's fastball. So I don't care that Wohlers threw 99 to 100 miles an hour. The reason why he became a great closer was because he finally started throwing his slider and split finger for strikes. And so the fact that they second guess Wohlers with that pitch, it's kind of frustrating for me. But, you know, it is what it is. We end up losing it and everything. But, you know, I end up getting a little bit of retribution, you know, following up and, you know, getting traded to the Yankees in 2000, win it with them, you know, it kind of came full circle. But it was a tough pill to swallow because I would have loved to win that World Series in 96 with them too.
Yeah, that would have been great. We both can't stand the Yankees, so
yeah, I hear you.
Tough pill to swallow. So then in 97, like you said before, you had maybe your best season yet, posting a 2.97 ERA, 20 wins over 233 innings, earning you another All-Star appearance. And let me just say, I'm looking through the baseball reference pages. I'm seeing that Braves rotation in 97, and I'm just like, the fact that team didn't win the World Series, if any of the Braves teams were going to win, I thought that could have been the year, because all of you guys had right around a 3 or below ERA. You're all pitching almost 200 innings.
Yeah.
That team's crazy. And so then you finished 3rd in the Cy Young voting, and then 97, you also got to make the first start at Turner Field, right behind me. During your career, what was your favorite stadium to pitch in?
Ooh, so I would say just from an overall baseball fan perspective, I always love going to St. Louis and playing there, just because they really do have some of the most incredible, knowledgeable baseball fans out there. You know, and as much as they love their hometown team, they just appreciate good baseball, you know. So like if Andrew Jones made a diving, you know, game-saving catch in the 7th or 8th inning, you know, to keep us up with a 1-run lead or something in the 7th or 8th inning, they'd be ticked, but they literally be like, gosh darn it, nice catch, Jones, you know, whatever. They didn't want to see it happen, but they also appreciate, you know, a good play made by the other team and stuff. So it was definitely one of my favorite places just to go play baseball because of that fact. But San Diego was my favorite place to pitch. I don't remember my exact career numbers, but I know I think I had like a 1.4 ERA pitching in San Diego. Part of the reason was because you knew every night it was going to be like 72 and sunny out there, you know, by game time. So it was hard not to love that perfect temperature, perfect weather to go out there. But the funny thing is though, is that the Petco Park, I think it's still called Petco now.
Yeah.
But you know, that's one of the best pitchers parks because it's so massive now and stuff. But the old Qualcomm, you know, whatever it was called before that, Jack Murphy Stadium, it was kind of known more as a hitter's ballpark. You know, it wasn't a big ballpark. The ball kind of carried, you know, decent there at night. But for whatever reason, everything just clicked for me whenever I pitched there.
Yeah. So before I get into my next question, I'm curious about 1997 coming off, obviously, that World Series the year prior. And with having so many like bona fide major leaguers and all-stars in that clubhouse, like obviously, you know, the big three in that rotation, yourself, Andrew Jones, like you mentioned, what was the feeling like in the clubhouse coming off a World Series and then the next year being so close to having it again?
Well, the great thing is that we had such an incredible clubhouse atmosphere and the camaraderie that we built around there, and it all started at the top, you know, from the ownership to the general manager, but most importantly in my eyes, and you ask anybody that ever played for him, Bobby Cox set the tone for that team better than any manager I've ever played for. You know, we respected him so much that we respected the game because of him and stuff, you know, and we wanted to go out there and we wanted to win so bad for that man because he was just such an incredible role model for us. And we knew he had our backs. You know, there was a reason why Bobby Cox would lead the league every year and getting kicked out of games. It wasn't because he wanted to go out there and do it, you know, and put on a show. He did it because whenever he got kicked out, he was backing up either his pitchers or his hitters because he felt like we were getting, you know, maybe screwed on a strike call or something like that, you know, and we just knew he had our backs, you know, and if he ever had an issue with anybody, you'd never see Bobby like ream a player out in the dugout. He always handled it up the runway or in his office after the game. And then if the media tried to ask about it, Bobby Cox would be like, don't you dare go and try to ask that guy about it. You know, whatever, that's between me and him. And if I find out one of your reporters tried to ask him about it, you're going to be banned for a couple of days or whatever, you know, because, you know, I don't like that crap, you know? And so it was just, you know, he just set the tone for us. So we all fed off of that and everything, you know? And so every year, that's one of the reasons why the Braves were so good for so long, because we just created that winning atmosphere, you know, and stuff. And we played the game the right way, you know, and like I said, all those guys, you know, from year in and year out, it would be a different group of guys, you know, from time to time, but every single one of those guys wanted to win so bad for that manager.
So after another good year in 98, you would end up being traded to Cincinnati and then eventually a few years later to the Yankees. During your career, you would play for 6 different major league teams. What was your favorite city to play in, either at home or on the road?
Well, I would definitely say the Braves for sure, you know, because again, kind of like what I was just saying, it was, you know, it was incredible to be able to play for that organization just up and down. But because of the fact, you know, to be able to play for a guy like Bobby Cox, it just made it so worthwhile. And then, you know, playing at home too, I had that great feeling every time I took the mound at Turner Field too. You know, I just felt a connection with the fans, you know, and stuff. I just enjoyed them so much. And, you know, I felt like I would put on a good show for them. And then I was a goofy guy that used to have a lot of fun with the fans and everything, whether it was doing the train sound or just, you know, playing pranks on people and stuff, you know. I mean, I had a reputation for that. So the fans kind of, you know, really took me in as well too. And I fed off of that.
Yeah, for sure. So then in 2000 with the Yankees, you got to start game 4 for the Yankees in the World Series. You pitched 4 2/3 innings in a Yankee win. That 2000 Yankee World Series team would take home the ring against the Mets. I'm still mad about it. It wasn't even alive, and I'm mad about it. So how special was it being a part of that iconic Yankee team?
You know, unbelievable. You know, I mean, the fact that I was finally able to get that ring, you know, and stuff and do it in the pinstripes was pretty incredible. But I'm with you though too. I do have to say, because I remember after I got traded to the Yankees, and then my first time coming into Baltimore as a, you know, on the visiting side, I had all these camera crews and stuff, interviewing me and stuff because I was the local kid and everything. And they're like, Denny, what's it like putting on the pinstripes and stuff? And I go, you guys know me. I grew up around here. I said, felt weird, man. I grew up hating the Yankees, and Jeter's right down the lock, a couple of lockers down, kind of gives me a funny look. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm just being honest, man. I grew up a huge Orioles fan. I go, now I'm loving putting the pinstripes on now. Don't get me wrong, but growing up, I hated them, man. So, but to be able to win my first World Series title in a Yankees uniform was pretty special. And then the fact that we were able to do it in a Subway Series, it was really incredible for my family because, as you guys know, usually the World Series, you play like whether it's the Yankees against the Dodgers, let's say, and you got 2 games at home and then you got to go cross country to play the other 3. So to be able to have the Subway Series, and my family growing up in Baltimore, it was only like a 2.5-hour train ride for them to come up. So for them to be able to come up and experience the whole World Series with me and be a part of all of that was a pretty incredible experience I'll never forget.
Yeah. So then following your stint with the Yanks, you signed with the Rockies. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difficulties of pitching at Coors Field?
Yep, it was not an easy assignment, and one that I knew it was a tough one, that I was going to have to take on and stuff, and it is what it is, and stuff. And we were hoping that myself and Mike Hampton could turn it around and prove that you could do it. But I don't care who you are, man. Like, here's the thing, like Greg Maddux always said it best too. It's not just the fact that the ball's not going to move as much, like his sinker didn't move as much. My changeup wouldn't break down in a way as much from righties and stuff. Mike Hampton's sinker and cutter wouldn't move as much. The worst part is physically it beats you up. There's a reason why the Olympics train in Colorado Springs, because if they can train at that altitude and get their bodies to react like that at that kind of altitude, then you can imagine how good they're going to be at regular sea level and stuff, And so that's what Maddux always said, and he's so right. He's like, dude, as a visiting pitcher, just coming in and pitching 7 innings at Coors, he goes, it would affect me for the next 2 or 3 starts sometimes. So now imagine doing that for 18, 19 home starts a year. And that's what really did me in. It just beat my body up left and right, and stuff. And I felt like it shortened my career a little bit because of the physical abuse it took on my body.
Yeah. So then I'm curious, throughout your career, out of anybody you faced, who was your toughest at bat? Who was your toughest batter to face?
Well, I know just because recently I downloaded a bunch of my stuff on the hard drive so my kids can see it and stuff. And so I was going back and watching some of it. And I had forgotten how bad like Reggie Sanders owned me. At one point he was hitting like 490, almost 500 with like 7 home runs against me. So he was one guy that wore me out. Dante Bichette from the Rockies used to wear me out too, as well as Ellis Burks. That I tell you what, coming in as a visiting pitcher facing the old Blake Street Bombers guys in those Rockies lineups with, Galarraga, Ellis Burks, Dante Bichette, Larry Walker, Vinny Castilla. That was a tough task, man. But Ellis Burks and Dante Bichette used to wear me out as well too.
Oh, we did our research on this one. There's going to be a lot of numbers from the span of 97 to 2001. Which is a span where this guy hit 254 home runs over that 5-season span. You faced Big Mac, Mark McGwire, 27 times. And it took him out of the first 14 of those at-bats just to reach base. You would end up striking him out 11 of those times. What does it take to pitch and dominate like you did a batter of McGwire's caliber?
Well, not for some reason. I mean, I can honestly say this, that was definitely one of the feathers in my cap. I love Mac too. I got to know him pretty well. And I just, for some reason, he's one of those guys I got locked in on. And so I could hit that spot up and in on him. And for some reason, you're not always going to hit it. But for some reason, I was always able to hit that up and in spot on him. So I'd hit that fastball up and in, and then I throw that changeup low and away. And he just could not stay back on my changeup. So, but the thing is, if you missed, on that up and in, and you missed a little bit up out of the plate, I mean, he could hit it 550 feet, but for whatever reason, I just was always locked in on him and seemed like I never missed that spot. And he would even say that to me, like, for crying out loud, Neagle, will you just give me one pitch, and stuff? Because it just seemed like I was always laser locked in on him. And the funny thing is, in Cincinnati, Mac and I had already planned on going out. I was pitching against him in a Saturday day game, and him and I planned to go have a beer after the game. And my dad's girlfriend was coming into town, and she knows nothing about like the superstitions in baseball, like you don't talk about a no-hitter and stuff, and then you certainly don't talk about owning a guy at the plate.
Yeah.
So after the game, it was like, at that point, I think that put him like 0 for 14 with like 10 or 11 punch outs against me. And so she goes, her name was Carol, and she goes, "Boy, Denny, you really own Big Mac like that, stuff." And I go, "Carol, we're going to have a beer with him. Remember, don't you dare say anything to him." We go to the bar. What's the first thing she says? "Boy, Denny really owned you again tonight, huh, Big Mac?" Like that, and I'm behind her going like, "I'm sorry, Mac," like that. And he's like, "No, dude, it's fine." He goes, "Yep, he definitely owned me again, man." Whatever. And then sure enough, the next game was the first when he finally went like 1 for 3 or 2 for 4 off me. I'm like, "See, you jinxed me, Carol."
Let's talk to you about your TV career. So you made an appearance on the show Arliss in the 5th season in 2000 on an episode titled Honoring Our Past. I watched the episode, funny one for sure. You also starred alongside NFL Hall of Famer Bruce Smith, which is a fun fact. He was in that episode as well. What was your experience on the show?
It was crazy is that, because it was talk about a whirlwind of a couple of days, because the rumors started flying. Like I said, now the rumors did fly that I was going to get traded, but I kept hearing I was going back to the Braves or I was going to the Diamondbacks. And then all of a sudden my agent calls me, and he's like, "Well, they finally got traded, Denny." Like, "Where do you think you went?" I'm like, "Back to the Braves." "No." "Diamondbacks?" "No." "Indians?" Because I heard them too. And then I said like 1 or 2 more teams. I'm like, "Where the heck am I going?" He goes, "You're going to the Yankees." I'm like, "What?" Because again, the rumors were out there I was getting traded, but I hadn't heard that one at all. So the fact that I'm going to the Yankees was just like a total shock. And then next, my agent's calling me again a couple hours later saying, "Hey, Denny, I just got a call from the producers of Arliss. They want to put you on the show because there's this bit, whatever." And as you remember the episode, it just so happened Robert Wool, the creator and star, they were hoping that somebody's going to get traded because of what this episode revolved around. And lo and behold, it comes across the ticker, Denny Neagle gets traded to the Yankees. "Oh my God, it's perfect. Get him on the phone." So they literally met us at JFK Airport just to film that scene, and stuff, whatever. So they literally just throw the camera in my face, give me my line like that, and stuff. And I remember I had my six-month-old son in my arms while I'm trying to say that line.
Got a little memory here for you. September 29th, 2001. You were at the plate and you were facing Jimmy Haynes.
Oh yeah.
The bases loaded. And you would end up taking him deep for a grand slam, making it a 13-6 game. What was the feeling seeing that ball soar over the fence?
Well, you talk about another bittersweet moment in my career, because I remember exactly what happened in that game. Yep. I hit that was my second career grand slam that I was able to hit. So I was definitely the answer to a trivia question for many years there, that I was the only career active pitcher that had more than one career grand slam. I still always like to brag about that. I'm a pitching coach at my son's high school. And so, whenever some of his fellow teammates start asking me about, "Well, coach, did you hit it all?" I'm like, "Yeah, 2 grand slams, man." Stuff. But that game though, yeah, you're right. It gave me a 13-6 lead, and I could not get out of the 5th inning because it was one of those Coors Field games. So it was incredible feeling, because I definitely got a hold of that one. I remember that. Like I uncorked it and hit it, into our bullpen, like off the wall and back in right center, off the back of the bullpen. So I corked it pretty good and it felt awesome. But then lo and behold, I come back and now I can't even get out of the 5th inning to get me the stinking win in that game, and stuff. So it was awesome to hit it my second career grand slam, but bittersweet in the fact that I couldn't even get out of the 5th inning to get the win in that game. I think the final score of that game, you might have it, but I think the final was like 24-16 or something like that. It was one of those crazy Coors Field games.
But yeah, it was crazy.
I gotta say, you were mentioning it was one of those Coors games. I think that one was all you though. I think you powered that one out of there.
That's right, man.
Yeah. So that's all the questions we have for you today, Denny. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a blast talking with you.
You got it, man. My pleasure.